Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about uh, getting clean and the number of times that I tried to get clean before I actually succeeded. And when I say I succeeded, it was totally God that delivered me from drugs. And in my opinion, and when I give my testimony to people, that's a miracle that happened in my life. So, I want to start off with reading something that I saw on Facebook. It's on a page that I follow called Walk with God. So it says, "You are not too dirty for God to cleanse. You are not too broken for God to fix. You are not too far for God to reach. You are not too guilty for God to forgive. And you are not too worthless for God to make worthy." I know a lot of people, or I've heard from a lot of people that they struggle with, just people struggle with a lot of things, especially these days. So if you're feeling worthless or shame or, one second. Shame or any of those feelings that that you shouldn't have to feel. God can help you through that, and He will. He wants to. I didn't really make notes in the past videos that I made, but I did make some for today. Celebrating my 4-year sobriety this summer. This wasn't the first time that I had attempted to get clean. The first time that I can remember was I moved, my parents and I moved out of the town where I was buying drugs, where it was easy to acquire crystal meth. And at the time, I didn't have a license, so I couldn't go get drugs, and drugs were kind of scarce at that time. So it wasn't that I was like, oh, hey, sweet, I'll get clean, But it was more of I couldn't find drugs. So, it turned into, I think it was about, I want to say 3 months. And then, I thought I was ready to get back out there and socialize. And so I went to a bar. Not a good choice. I trust myself going to social events and, being around drinking now. I would never willingly put myself in a situation where people are doing drugs and stuff like that. Not that I don't trust myself, I choose to not be around that. But I went to a bar, and lo and behold, there was an old friend there, quote unquote friend, because nobody's ever really your friend when you're just using drugs together. So, they introduced me to some people that I had never met, and this person was like, hey, do you want to come back to our house? Well, we have beers there and drinks there, we can keep drinking. And I was like, I had a drunk buzz on, so I was like, yeah, sure, cool. And then the coke came out, and my drug of choice before this was the meths, and so I was like, yeah, okay, sure. And I got a buzz from the coke, and that really that triggered in my brain. I was like, yeah, I want this buzz. I want to get the meth buzz going again. They didn't have meth, but that triggered me to want to find some. So I got back into the meth. Another time that I tried to get clean, I had a breakdown at the job I was at one day, And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I went into work that day without meth. I was texting all the people that I thought would, drop me some off. I was like, bring me a coffee and drop me off a rail or whatever. Excuse me. And nobody was answering me. So I couldn't power through the day. I was no energy. I was bitchy. I was, a mess. And so I said, I can't do this anymore. I started crying in the office. I told them, what was going on. They said, okay, well, we'll help you get into rehab. And I was like, whoa, you're going to help me? Like, I'm a drug addict. And I guess by law, they can't fire you because you're a drug addict, because that will result in a lawsuit. So they signed some documentation which kind of fast forwarded me and helped me get into rehab faster. So I attended an all women's rehab in Hamilton, and it was a 5-week program. So you're there for the 5 weeks, you can't leave. So I went in the weekend. So I went in on a Sunday, was admission day. That weekend, like the Friday, Saturday, I went out and partied because you're supposed to be clean for a week before you go to kind of detox, so you're not like freaking out. Some people, I guess, freak out when they're detoxing and go on rage modes. With meth, when you're detoxing, you're sleeping. That's it. You're sleeping and sweating. So I partied, I got high, got drunk, and some other things. And you'll know what the other things are later. So I get to rehab, and it's the usual, I know it's the usual come down from meth. Sleeping, no energy. And so at rehab, they have you do, you're on a scheduled routine. You get up at a certain time, breakfast is made for you by the cook or whatever. Go to class, you have like smoke breaks or, whatever, lunch, class again. And when I was there, all the counselors were ex-drug addicts. So in that sense, it was sort of nice because they could relate to what you're going through, except for me. They had never had a meth addict enrolled in their program before, and none of the counselors had ever been addicted to meth before. So at that point, I was feeling like, why am I here? Like, if you don't know what I'm going through, you don't know how to help me. And then the one lady was just, the one counselor at the one class was just like, you got to quit smoking. You got to quit smoking. And I was just like, and we were supposed to be, being true to ourselves and all this other stuff. And I'm like, I'm in such a B bitch mode right now. Like, I can't even listen to you. And she's like, well, get out of my class then. And I was like, I freaked out and left, and I was just like, this is like, how are you're not helping at all. Anyways, so the 5-week program, while I was at rehab, I found out I was pregnant. So I knew that I had gotten pregnant the weekend before I went in because I had sex that weekend. And for the young kids, or not the young kids, but for the teenagers out there, when your parents tell you that it only takes one time to get pregnant, they're not lying. That's all it takes, one time. So it was a one-night stand. I knew the person, but it was just a one-time thing. But I found out I was pregnant at rehab. So I kept that a secret from my parents. I didn't tell them. How they found out was a weird message on the house phone. I think it was somebody that knew me from rehab and somehow got information and left a weird random message with no name or whatever saying that I was pregnant. I felt really ashamed when my mom questioned me about it. There was a lot of emotion going on there from her part and me. So that was really emotional, finding out you're pregnant. So the first 5 weeks of pregnancy were, I was clean. That didn't last very long. When I got out of rehab, I went back and saw a friend that I used to hang out with all the time. I know that she's clean now and I'm clean now. But at the time, we were like joint at the hip, and we would always use together. And so she was like the first person I went to see when I got out, and I was like, and I found out she was pregnant at the time too. And so we would use together and be pregnant and using together. And people would still sell us drugs. It wasn't until I started to show that people were like, hey, you're pregnant, I'm not going to sell you drugs. So it got harder and harder to get a hold of it. So as I progressed in my pregnancy, the using slowed down and then came to a halt. And because I was pregnant, I wasn't working. Yeah. So then comes, birthday. So I had my son, and for the first few months I was nursing and not using. Now, I do want to put this out there. He wasn't born addicted to drugs. This isn't an excuse for people to go out there and use drugs and be like, oh, well, my kid won't be addicted to drugs as long as I do what she did and don't use for the first 5 weeks and whatever. I'm not saying that. Don't. It was only by God's grace, and I know that in my heart, that my son was born not addicted to drugs. He doesn't have any learning disabilities. He doesn't, show signs or anything of drug addiction or anything. So that's another miracle in my life. So yeah, after that, the body changes and the self-hatred, like I talked about yesterday, started to come in. And I never really loved my son, because he was more of a hindrance. Once I started using again, after he was born, he was more of a hindrance rather than, my baby. And it really kind of made me depressed when people would come over and always be like, how's the baby? Let me see the baby. I never really felt that anybody gave a crap about how I was feeling or how I was doing. And so that was kind of, a crappy feeling. And so then, continued on. And when you quit doing drugs, and at least in my experience, when I would quit and then start back up again, you didn't start at where you started in the beginning. You started up where you left off. So if you were in it deep when you quit and you start up again, you get right back into it where you left off. So, I started, I had my license at that time, and my dad would let me use the vehicle. And so I would be gone for days at a time, getting high, meeting different new people that I could get high with. Yeah, new people that I could, get drugs from, whatever. So I think Caden was, I want to say close to a year, or maybe a year-ish, and I found out I was pregnant again. And my state of mind at that time wasn't, oh, this baby will get me clean. I was like, full-blown drug addict, no want, there was no want in me to stop whatsoever, because I was kind of well, it's going to be so hard. Quitting is going to be so hard. Using and lying to people and just keeping up that lie of hey, I have a job, I'm working. No, I'm not using drugs. That seemed easier than getting clean and people knowing hey, that chick was a drug addict. Let's judge, or let's not hire her, or let's not, whatever. So I had an abortion, because I didn't want to have 2 babies to take all my time away from getting high or doing what I wanted to do. I was very selfish. Selfish is a great word. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what it was. I was very selfish. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. Okay? So then, I'm going to try and keep this video short, because I don't want to lose, I know when I watch videos about stuff like this, I don't want people to lose interest, because I do want to get my story across. But I started to steal. I Googled and figured out a bunch of ways that you could steal merchandise from stores, and I was stealing money from my mom, which is, I know it's disgusting. And so I would either steal money from my mom or steal things from stores like cell phones, Xboxes, laptops, stuff like that, to trade for drugs. So that was a really low point in my life. Well, it all was, but yeah. And the thing is, when I got clean, it wasn't that I wanted to, it was, well, I did want to. I didn't want to live the rest of my life as a drug addict, but when my parents confronted me about it, they're like, we're not going to love you any less. We just want to help you. And that time, they had never really said that to me before, or maybe they had, but that time it really registered. So I wrote a little thing here. I didn't want to talk to my parents about it because they loved me too much. I know that sounds weird, but the enemy was lying to me and telling me that they wouldn't love me anymore if they knew everything, right? And that's the biggest crap lie. And so I did kind of realize, now for me, for everybody's sobriety is different. So what I'm telling you is just from my experience. So I knew I needed to talk about things that were going in my life and stuff, but I needed to talk to somebody who didn't love me as much as my parents loved me. So for example, I sought out my own counseling. I only had the one session, and she recommended that I join AA or NA. So I joined an NA group, which was so amazingly helpful, because you come into this group, these people are very welcoming, and everybody is there because the same reason you are: addiction. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, they're there because they were once an addict in your exact shoes. They're not judging. My first NA meeting, I didn't use drugs all day because I knew I was going to the meeting. On my way home, I got high. And that was the last time that I got high. And what they recommend in NA is getting a sponsor. And so a sponsor is somebody from that group that you trust, that is willing to let you call them at 12 in the afternoon, 12 in the morning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 a.m. in the morning. Any time of day, 24/7. If you are feeling that you're going to use. You call them, they will answer, and they will talk you off the ledge. I remember the one time I had to call my sponsor. I was driving, I had to pull over. I was bawling, I was shaking. I just was like driving down this road, and I could go straight home or turn and go pick up drugs. And I needed them at that moment, and they were there. And so I'm gonna close it off here. So I'm just gonna say this. In my opinion, drug use, give the enemy and all his voices a foot in the door in your life. And I promise you that if you ask God to help you, He will. He wants to help you. And your family that love you, or friends that love you, want to help you. And for you to ask for help is not shameful. It's not shameful to want to live a good life. It is not shameful at all. And I don't know how much I can say this, but it's okay to ask for help. Please ask somebody for help. Please. Please. And so whether you yell or whisper the name of Jesus in the presence of His name, the enemy has to flee. That is like a set in stone rule. But it's not just a one and done thing. You need to keep calling on the Lord. You need to keep calling out that name, Jesus, Jesus. Because, like I said before, He wants to help and protect you. So, on that note, I'm going to close. God bless everybody. Have a blessed day. I hope this reaches at least one person. And if this is your 17th or 20th, 1000th time reaching out to get clean, reaching out for help, keep doing it. Because I believe in you, and you should believe in yourself. Bye, guys.